physically, who is the strongest person you know and what makes them so strong? Well, I'm going to start with, I want to tell you about this dude. I think he's probably physically the strongest person I've ever really been around. I may have met somebody stronger at some point, but freshman year of high school, I walked into the weight room for a first day of football training and saw this dude who I'd never met before, which is pretty rare in Paoli. Pretty much you've met everybody if you've lived there for like a year. And so I walked through the door, see this new guy, and he is a freshman as well. And so I'm like, well, this guy's totally new. And so nobody wanted to go with him for the whole weightlifting session that morning. And so I was like, I'll partner up with him. And so I partnered with this dude, learned his name is David, and he's got I can already tell, he's a different breed of dude than me, all right? He's got some guys have shoulders that just go straight to their ears, That was David. No neck, not even a little bit of a neck, just straight to the ears. Shoulders just straight into those ears. And, he had thighs that were tree trunk, all right? That thigh plus, 3 more, And the gun show, let me tell you, it was impressive, okay? So I walk in first day, I team up with David, and I've never seen this dude lift before. We go over to the squat rack, and I do the first set of squats, and I'm kind of a scrawny freshman at that point, kind of lanky and not looking like I look now, and because I know you guys are thinking, man, he's ripped. Surely he's the strongest person he's ever met, right? So anyway, we go to the squat rack, and I do the first set of squats, and I put it up, and he looks at, a couple 45s and something else on there, which is not very much, to be honest. So, and he's like, well, we're going to need more. And there were a couple more hanging down, couple more 45-pound plates hanging down on the rack. And I was like, well, there's more. No, that wasn't enough. He's like, we got to go looking for more. So he goes to the other side of the weight room, picks up 2 45-pound plates in each hand. I couldn't even get my hands around him. He just picks up 2 plates with each hand, carries them like this, straight across the room. Dude, that's 90 pounds that you're just gripping and holding like that all the way across the room. And just goes, slides it on. I was like, man, I want to work out with somebody else now, right? Dude was just incredibly ripped. And I watched him for 4 years run over every dude in front of him for running, whether he was playing fullback on offense or playing nose tackle on defense, whoever was in front of him, he ran him over. Now, that was for the first play or two, and then he got worn out, and he was done. But for the first play or two, he ran him over. Then he had to go take a rest for about 5 minutes, and come in and run somebody else over. That was the strongest dude I've ever met, all right? Anybody watch the World's Strongest Man competitions? 3 guys raise their hand. You guys like them? I haven't watched those for a while. They air them on ESPN every now and again, and by ESPN, I mean ESPN 5, because nobody watches it on ESPN, the regular one. And so I turned on, I pulled it up on YouTube this week and started watching, and I was like, these guys do the most obscure things. It's meaningless. These guys are huge, all right? There are trucks that are smaller than these dudes. And so these dudes are so big that their arms come out to here, and they just just elbows is how far it goes out, right? And so they pick up these weird different things. One thing will be they pick up a truck, and they just hold it there. How long can I hold a truck? Because obviously, all those times that you're going to need to pick up a truck and hold it there for 3 minutes, And so one of the other things is they pick up a refrigerator and carry it as far as they can until they can't carry it anymore, and then they drop it, and however far they carried it, that's their score. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Nobody is going to pick up a refrigerator and carry it into the house. If you need to remove a refrigerator, you pick up a dolly and you wheel that thing up there because you can't even fit through the door going that way. Like they're like, picking it up like this and swinging it through. That's not going to work. Dude, their whole thing, it was meaningless. I was amazed at how meaningless their acts of strength were. And, this week and for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about a dude who I think would have bossed all those dudes in all those strongman competitions. His name is Samson, all right? And Samson, let me pick that up real quick. Samson is a dude that we find in the book of Judges. And Samson is a dude of great strength, and he's a dude of some pretty awful weaknesses, all right? He is this kind of, he's like your typical meathead, okay? Really strong, nothing going on, all right? And so we're going to see some incredible blunders from Samson throughout the next few weeks. But just to set you guys up here, I want you to give you an idea what's going on with Samson. Samson is a judge in the book of Judges in the nation of Israelites, okay? So just set that up. The Israelites have been brought out of slavery by Moses, by the hand of God, through Moses, all right, and led through the Red Sea, and then they wandered around for a while, and Moses dies, Joshua takes over. Joshua is this great military leader. He leads them in to this land of Canaan, which God had promised to their great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy named Abraham, right? And so God leads them into this land of Canaan. They sweep through in the book of Joshua, take it over, defeat everyone there. All right? And the purpose of the Judges, which happens right after the book of Joshua dies, and they're kind of left without one really strong leader. And so they kind of, through the book of Judges, they keep cycling through these leaders called judges. And the purpose of these judges is mainly to protect the Israelite people from all the people around them that want the land of Canaan. All these people are going to kind of the Midianites and the Philistines and several other people. I'm not going to venture their names. Amorites, I don't know. They start coming in. They're trying to take over the land of Canaan, take it back from the Israelite people. And the judge's responsibility is to keep that from happening. And so it's at that point that we meet this dude named Samson. Well, actually, for tonight, we're going to meet his parents, all right? And we're just going to get a little glimpse at Samson, all right? So, and one other thing that happens with this whole Judges thing, Joshua, his whole generation follows God pretty well, all right? Joshua dies, the generation dies, and the next generation, it says over and over again in the book of Judges, that they did evil in the sight of the Lord, all right? They did evil in the sight of the Lord. And so in that, we start to see these judges pop up, and we see Samson here in Judges chapter 13. If you want to turn there, if you got your phone out or something like that, you're going to look at Judges chapter 13 with me. We'll start reading there. We're going to read a fair portion of it. We'll start in verse 2. It says, "In those days, a man named Manoah from the tribe of Dan lived in the town of Zorah. His wife was unable to become pregnant, and they had no children. The angel of the Lord appeared to Manoah's wife and said, 'Even though you have been unable to have children, you will soon become pregnant and give birth to a son. So be careful, you must not drink wine or any other alcoholic drink, nor eat any forbidden food. You will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and his hair must never be cut, for he will be dedicated to God as a Nazirite from birth. He will begin to rescue Israel from the Philistines.'" Okay? Now, big thing here happens is that the angel of the Lord comes and appears in front of Manoah's wife, and she, stop it, Curtis. Dang it. I did it again. Okay? So the angel of the Lord comes and appears in front of Manoah's wife and says, "You're going to have a son." Now, this would have been hard to believe for Manoah's wife, but she doesn't really think so. She's old. She has already been totally unable to have children, and this angel of the Lord comes and tells her she's going to have a child. And Samson is going to start to get strength, I think, from a few foundations that his parents set out. all right? And the first is this, is that Samson's strength comes from dedication and commitment to God, all right? Samson's strength comes from dedication and commitment to God. Manoah's wife, Samson's mom, hears this, that she's going to have a son, and the angel gives her some pretty strict instructions. He's going to take a Nazirite vow, which means there are these people, the Israelite people are following God, but there are these other people who take the Nazirite vow and follow God even more closely. They're even more dedicated. They're taking this to a whole new level. All right? And in this Nazirite vow, there are lots of things about you can't touch certain things, one of them being dead carcasses, all right? You can't drink alcohol. You can't have anything that comes from the grapevine, all right? Not a grape, not grape skins, not grape juice, not wine. It doesn't matter. You can't have it, all right? You can't have any alcohol, and you have to maintain these. You can only eat what is absolutely clean, and there are a few extra restrictions on that, all right? So this is a big vow, and Manoah's wife, Samson's mom, takes this vow for the time that she's pregnant. She says, I will take that, and I will do these things as the angel of the Lord commands her to do. And ultimately, the purpose of this Nazirite vow is to consecrate the Nazirite for God's purposes. Consecrate. I'm guessing there are like at least half of you who don't know what that word means, so let me explain it. Consecrate means to set yourself apart for something, all right? It means to set yourself apart from the world for something godly. All right? So in order for Samson to consecrate himself, he takes the Nazirite vow and he says, even though the Israelite people are okay to drink alcohol and okay to have wine and okay to eat grapes and okay to cut their hair, I'm going to take this Nazirite vow and live even more set apart for God's purposes. Samson isn't given strength for his own useless pursuits, though. He's given it for the purposes that God has in his life. And it's understanding and committing to that purpose that leads to great strength. In other words, consecrating himself, setting himself apart. And this required great discipline. These things aren't easy. In the life of an Israelite, there's plenty of vineyards. There are things that go on in daily life that would have made it hard a little bit for these guys to continue in this Nazirite vow. But Samson's mom starts this, and so I think in a way she kind of passes down this discipline, and she passes down the blessings that come from this discipline in Samson's life. And when Samson maintains his discipline as a Nazirite, he is strong. And when he does not, he's weak. When he follows God closely, he sets himself apart, consecrates himself, he is strong. When he goes with the world, whenever he is undisciplined and continues in things that are worldly, he is weak. So what about us? How do we consecrate ourselves? That's one of the things I want you guys to get tonight. Two things I want you guys to get. One of them is this. How do we consecrate ourselves? How do we become set apart for God's purposes? Well, there are honestly numerous ways that I can't go into all of them tonight, but I want you to be thinking about one, I guess, tonight, is that how do you consecrate yourselves by rearranging your priorities? I think that's got to be the first place you go. If you're going to set yourself apart from the world for something that is godly in purpose, then you have to rearrange your priorities. And then no longer can your priorities just be that you're a star athlete. No longer can your priorities just be that you have that girl or you have that guy. No longer can your priorities just be that you get good grades or that you're popular. It can't just be that you have a good time on the weekends. It can't just be about instant gratification. It can't just be about having fun. Not to say that a life in God isn't going to be fun at times, but that's not the main pursuit. The main pursuit, if you are going to consecrate yourself, if you're going to set yourself apart for the purposes of God, have to be the purposes of God. They have to rise up your priority list to become the most important thing to you. All right? And so when Samson is given great strength, it is that he has consecrated himself. He has prioritized God's calling over anything else in his life. All right? We move on to Samson's dad, Manoah. Manoah's wife runs back and tells him that she saw this angel, and that's obviously pretty big news. And so Manoah's like, well, I want to see him. And so it says, then Manoah prayed to the Lord, saying, Lord, please let the man of God come back to us again and give us more instructions about this son who is to be born. God answered Manoah's prayer, and the angel of God appeared once again to his wife, and as she was sitting in the field. But her husband, Manoah, was not with her. So she quickly ran and told her husband, the man who appeared to me the other day is here again. Yes, he replied, Manoah ran back with his wife and asked, are you the man who spoke to my wife the other day? Yes, he replied, I am. And so Manoah asked him, get this, when your words come true, what kind of rules should govern the boy's life and work? All right? One thing I want you to get here. Samson's strength comes from a foundation from his mom of discipline, from his mom of consecration, being set apart. From his dad, it's a foundation of humility and worship. Manoah knows that his own human strength isn't enough. He knows that his own human knowledge, his own human ways aren't going to be enough to raise this boy for the kingdom's purposes, for God's purposes. And so he asked the angel of God, what should I do? Tell me what greater things should I be doing so that I can raise this boy for these purposes? He just wants more instruction from God. Manoah understands that his ability to carry out any God-given purpose only comes from God. His ability to carry out any God-given purpose only comes from God. Our human nature is to say, go it alone, right? Especially in America, we say, go it alone. It's like the John Wayne way. It's been around forever, right? I feel like John Wayne's been around forever anyway. So this whole idea is that you've got to make it your own way, all right? You've got to do whatever good thing on your own to make it so that it is actually good, because it's not good for you unless you accomplish it on your own. All right? But God's way says the only way that you can accomplish my purposes is if you lean into my strength. Your own strength might be enough to win on the court, but it's only by leaning into God's strength that you can win your whole team to Jesus. Your own strength might be enough to graduate in the top 10 of your class and receive lots of scholarships, but it's only by leaning into God's strength that you can take your education and use it to change the world, not just for your lifetime, not just for a time being, but for eternity. Your own strength might be enough to make you successful and wealthy and have a great career. But it is only by leaning into God's strength that you can have a family that really has a good and healthy life as a family. I can preach that to you all night. I know so many guys here in Jasper and in other places that I've been who have great successful careers, who have plenty of money and beautiful families, but when you look at their family, it's not what it could be because they have leaned into their own strength and not into the strength of God. Finally, Manoah turns back to God in worship. He's humble. He turns back to God in worship. It says in verse 17, then Manoah asked the angel of the Lord, what is your name? For when all this comes true, we want to honor you. First thing, real quick, I love that Manoah doesn't even take time to contemplate that this might actually not be true. He doesn't say, well, if this comes true, I want to honor you. And he says, when this comes true, I want to honor you. So what's your name? But even bigger than that, Manoah in all of this says to God, he says, this is about you. This is about your honor. This isn't about me. This isn't about my family. This isn't about my kingdom. This isn't about my doing. This is about you. And so when this good thing happens, I want to honor you. He's prioritizing again. He's saying this is about God rather than about me. It's often a lot easier to depend on God when nothing is going right and say, you know what, in this moment, I obviously need God. But it's a lot harder sometimes to depend on God when everything is going right. It's a lot harder sometimes to give God the glory when everything's going right, and you could easily say, this is my doing. Manoah says, when this good thing happens, I want to honor you, God. I want to bring all this together tonight with this. Romans 12, 1 and 2, it says, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind that he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect." Listen, if you're looking for purpose and you're looking for strength for that purpose, it comes down to two things right here in Romans 12 that we've seen in Manoah and in Manoah's wife. First, give your whole self to God as an act of worship, which is to consecrate yourself. It's to say, I am setting myself apart for God. And two is to allow God to change you and to make you different than the world around you. That's Romans 12:2. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. When you let God transform you, when you let God change you, make you different than the world, then he changes your disciplines, he changes your priorities, and you can be set up with strength for his purpose, knowing good and well what his purpose is and how that plays in your life. Judges 13, the very end of it, it says, "When her son was born, she named him Samson. And the Lord blessed him as she grew up, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him while he lived in these cities that I'm not going to mention because they're way too hard to pronounce, which is located between the towns of Zorah and Eshtal." Point there is that in this moment, Samson is filled with the Spirit because his parents had laid the foundation saying, I am setting you apart. And they laid the foundation of humility and worship, depending on God and giving him the honor and glory when something good happened. Strongest person I've ever known, probably my mama. She died about 2 months ago, and she was a woman who lived every single moment of her life, it seemed, knowing what her purpose was. Not a woman with some great platform. She wasn't a lady who was out to change the world, going to every big city around the world and different countries and all that. She was a woman who every person that she encountered her hospitality, encountered her love, because she knew that her purpose was to share the gospel of Jesus. And she knew that her way of doing that was through that hospitality and through that love, and she was strengthened in those things because God strengthened her. Because she was doing it for his purpose, set herself apart for that purpose, and trust me, she gave him the glory in all those things. If you want to be strengthened for the purpose of God, consecrate yourself, set yourself apart, humble yourself, know that you've got to depend on him, and give God the glory in the end. Let's pray. Dear God, I thank you for the story of Samson. God, I thank you for the kind of funny and ridiculous parts that we're going to get into in the next few weeks, because it's kind of funny to read your word whenever you have a sense of humor and show that to us in your word. But God, tonight I thank you for this beautiful story of Manoah and his wife that are so dedicated to you that they set their son up for your purposes. God, I pray that in that we would find ways to set ourselves up for your purposes, to consecrate ourselves, set ourselves apart, and to be fully devoted to the purposes that you've set before us. God, we love you. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen.